okay? Whereas a postmodernist tends to be more libertarian, although there's a range of libertarians out there, but kind of more towards that end of the spectrum, or a voluntarist, which is someone who really believes that there should be no government controls, and any form of governance is destructive, or anarchism is often associated with that as well. Aaron, go ahead.
Well, most of those three political philosophies are generally kind of rely on ideas of morals that are kind of absolute. So how do you get those philosophies with a postmodern idea?
Well, give me an example of that.
Okay, justice. When you establish a government like in a libertarian minimal state, you have to have a standard of justice. That's just one example.
Okay, so let's go to justice. So that one's very consistent with this one, right? With Christian fund, you see the consistency of this one, right? Just go ahead and keep your mic on. You don't have to raise your hand again.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying though is, wait, but libertarianism is sort of based on a moral idea. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that all three, libertarianism, voluntarism, and even anarchism, kind of rely on some idea of rights, which is not, which I don't think most postmodernists would agree with under your definition of postmodernism.
Oh, okay, good. So that doesn't mean that they don't believe in effectiveness, but they make a pragmatic argument. A true postmodernist is going to make a pragmatic argument, like I was talking about before, right? They're not necessarily going to make a moral argument, okay? Now, there's exceptions to that, and very few people are strictly 100% perfectly in one of these camps. I mean, the way that I've described Christian fundamentalism, are there plenty of people who have a little bit of a range within that, and they're a little bit different from that, and they're not always 100% that way? Yeah, so it's the same. So you might come across like I have a very good friend, his name's Ryan, who's very much an anarchist, but he argues for anarchism on very moral ground. And he's really more of a naturalist in his philosophy and a moral relativist, but he still believes in some level of moral absolutes as well. So he's sort of a mixture of those, okay? Most people tend to have influences from many of these worldviews, and therefore, especially when they're trying to justify their belief systems, will use elements of each, okay? Does that answer your question, Aaron? So don't get it too much down to, well, like it's the people have to be perfectly consistent. Do you know Christians that are perfectly consistent? Do you know anyone who's perfectly consistent? You know, but in general, these people tend to fall into this line, and they tend to make a more pragmatic, especially on the anarchism level of that. They tend to make a pragmatic argument, whereas an anarchist who's also a Christian fundamentalist would probably make a moral argument. Or an anarchist who is a humanist or a secular humanist might make more of a moral argument for those same things.
Okay. What are some examples of some libertarian thinkers who fit into the postmodernist philosophy?
Derrida would probably be the rest, the best, and Rorty would be right up there with them. So they tend to go to this end, but a lot of them kind of go to this end not out of like principle, but also they tend to just kind of go to that end of the spectrum because it's like, in the end, they don't want anyone in their way. They don't want they would rather not have the cultural controls. They would not, any forms of controls, you know, from anyone else is not comfortable when there is no truth. If you believe in a truth, then you're going to kind of say, okay, well, if we can come to a conclusion, then we can all agree, and then we can govern ourselves according to those agreements. But if you, on a fundamental level, don't believe that you can ever come to a conclusion, or that there is an objective truth, you're not going to be very comfortable with agreeing to share power with other people because you can't come to a conclusion with them. Yeah, are you talking about the professor from, or prof from, what is it called? Moon is a Harsh Mistress? Yeah. So the professor also is very much a pragmatist, and he's like, the people aren't ready for this. But in his heart, he's like, look, it really comes down to, you know, he's more of an anarchist, but he's willing to accept more libertarian value or libertarian views, even though he really believes in anarchism. Now, okay. All right, let's keep going here. Then lastly, self-governance. Cosmic humanists would say, yeah, okay, like, each of these groups might have their points, sure. But what really matters is your own governance. Where it really comes down to is your life, your family. And if everyone really took care of themselves and lived better lives and took care of their fellow man and lived in a way that is both charitable but also takes care of themselves, we're not, that kind of makes a lot of these arguments from all three of these groups sort of moot, because everyone is just kind of doing their thing and is responsible and taking care of themselves. Does that make sense? So they're saying, you'll find cosmic humanists that are more libertarian, you'll find cosmic humanists that are more conservative, and you'll find cosmic humanists that tend to be more liberal in their thinking. But in the end, they're all saying, but most of all, what matters is you governing yourself and living a good life yourself, and then we have less need for all of that. That's the stuff that really matters. That's the stuff that's really going to make a difference.